Greetings! Today I'm going to talk about the Dark Knight of the Expanse, Amos Burton. I'm going to cover his relationships with Rocinante crew, Miller, Prax, and some other heroes from Seasons 1, 2, and 3. By the way, I made a list of the Expanse-related videos on my channel. Here comes the juice. When we first meet Amos, he serves as a mechanic aboard the Canterbury, where he works closely with Naomi Nagata, the ship's engineer. Their relationship is not romantic but deeply loyal, almost codependent. Naomi appears to be one of the few people whose judgment Amos respects without question. He obeys her directives with an intensity that feels more like instinct than reason. This relationship defines much of Amos's behavior early on. When Naomi speaks, he listens. He trusts her moral compass more than his own, likely because he knows he lacks one himself. Naomi is also the first person to humanize Amos. Through her, the audience begins to understand that Amos isn't evil, he's damaged. He does not operate on traditional concepts of right and wrong. Instead, he externalizes morality, following the lead of someone he considers good. In Season 1, that person is Naomi. As a mechanic, he is competent, efficient, and calm, even under extreme pressure. He helps keep the Rocinante functional as they transition from surviving the destruction of the Canterbury to becoming entangled in a system-wide conspiracy. But it's in combat that Amos reveals his most dangerous qualities. He fights with chilling efficiency and no hesitation. He does not posture or threaten, he simply acts. When violence is on the table, Amos is usually the first to respond, not out of anger or fear, but because he sees it as the most direct solution. This pragmatic, almost machine-like readiness to kill makes him both a terrifying ally and a deeply disturbing presence. Amos's psychological profile suggests elements of psychopathy. He lacks empathy, rarely expresses guilt, and operates in a way that feels emotionally detached from the consequences of his actions. However, unlike a stereotypical psychopath, Amos has an acute awareness of his limitations. He knows he isn't a good judge of right and wrong, and therefore outsources his morality to those he trusts, first Naomi, and later in the series, Holden. This moral outsourcing becomes crucial to understanding his role in the crew. It is not that Amos doesn't want to do the right thing, it's that he doesn't know how to determine what that is. This self-awareness paradoxically makes him more human and more dangerous at the same time. Hints about Amos's traumatic childhood begin to surface in Season 1. He refers cryptically to a rough upbringing on Earth, specifically in Baltimore, suggesting a life shaped by violence, exploitation, and survival. The details are left vague, but it's clear that Amos's emotional detachment and violent instincts are not innate, they are the result of systemic abuse and neglect. This backstory invites sympathy, but it does not excuse his behavior. Instead, it adds a layer of tragic inevitability to his role in the series. Throughout Season 1, Amos demonstrates a consistent willingness to use lethal force preemptively. In one scene, he nearly kills Holden during a disagreement, drawing his weapon without hesitation. In another, he almost executes a spy who has infiltrated the Rocinante, only stopping when Naomi intervenes. These moments underline the fine line Amos walks between protector and executioner. Without the moderating influence of others, he is capable of extreme violence at the slightest provocation. Amos's once unwavering loyalty to Naomi Nagata begins to shift in Season 2. While he still clearly respects and protects her, there's a growing sense of distance. Naomi starts to assert herself more independently, making major decisions, like hiding a sample of the proto-molecule, without consulting the crew, and this includes Amos. Though Amos doesn't confront her directly, the subtle change marks a turning point. He begins to search for new moral anchors, quietly accepting that Naomi may no longer serve that role unconditionally. This emotional recalibration is important. It shows Amos is growing not by becoming less loyal, but by becoming more self-aware. His moral outsourcing is evolving from blind devotion into something more conscious. Amos's relationship with Alex Kamal also begins to warm in Season 2. Early on, their dynamic was marked by tension. Alex is emotional and conscientious, while Amos is clinical and detached. But as the crew of the Rocinante grows closer, their bond strengthens. Alex begins to understand that Amos isn't heartless, he's just operating with different wiring. Meanwhile, Amos starts to respect Alex's loyalty and heart, even if he doesn't always understand it. This relationship adds emotional dimension to Amos, showing he's capable of friendship, not just allegiance. He doesn't need to agree with Alex to value him. One of the most jarring moments in Season 2 is when Amos kills Sematimba, an old friend of Miller, on Ceres Station. The moment is quick and brutal. To Amos, Sematimba was a threat, he had a gun and was getting in the way. That was enough. How so? The killing puts Amos in direct conflict with Miller. The tension between them is palpable. Miller sees the act as unnecessary and cold-blooded. Amos sees it as simple math. In this confrontation, The Expanse highlights the existential gap between Amos and people with emotional moral frameworks. Amos isn't trying to be cruel, he just doesn't process decisions through the same emotional filters. This divide is both terrifying and fascinating. One of the most meaningful arcs for Amos in Season 2 is his budding relationship with Prax, the botanist desperately searching for his kidnapped daughter. Prax, emotional and self-sacrificing, is everything Amos is not, but Amos is drawn to him. As he watches Prax struggle, hope, and keep going purely out of love, Amos begins to admire him, not just for his determination, but for his ability to care so deeply. Prax's example leaves a mark on Amos. He sees in Prax a kind of strength that isn't physical or tactical, it's moral, and for the first time, Amos seems to want that for himself. Amos has a memorable and unsettling exchange with Paulo Cortazar, the protomolecule scientist held aboard Tycho Station. Cortazar is cold, emotionless, and obsessed with the potential of the protomolecule, entirely unconcerned with human suffering. Their conversation is not just eerie, it's revealing. Amos recognizes something of himself in Cortazar, the emotional detachment, the capacity for violence, the clinical mindset. But instead of feeling kinship, Amos is disturbed. This interaction forces him to confront a terrifying question. Am I like him? What makes this moment powerful is Amos's reaction. He doesn't admire Cortazar, he's repulsed. It's a subtle but important shift. Amos doesn't want to become the kind of person who feels nothing. This moment marks a key point in his journey. He begins to seek out emotional understanding, not because he has to, but because he wants to avoid becoming a true monster. In a tense and unforgettable scene, the Rocinante crew interrogates a man connected to the disappearance of Prax's daughter, May. The man is smug and uncooperative until Amos snaps. Without warning, he slams the man against a wall and begins a brutal, efficient beating, smashing his face repeatedly while the others look on. This isn't random violence, it's deeply personal. Amos is clearly affected by Prax's pain and disgusted by the man's complicity in harming children. It's one of the first times we see Amos act out of empathy, even if his method is still terrifying. His rage isn't cold or calculated. It's fueled by a growing sense of moral clarity, however raw and undeveloped. One of the most emotionally resonant arcs in Season 3 is the deepening of Amos's friendship with Prax. What begins in Season 2 as Amos's fascination with Prax's compassion becomes, in Season 3, a kind of mentorship and empathy. When the Rocinante crew finally tracks down May's captor, Dr. Strickland, the moment becomes a powerful test for Amos. Prax holds a gun to the scientist who experimented on his daughter, but ultimately can't pull the trigger. It's a critical moment. Prax refuses to let vengeance consume him. Amos, however, has no such hesitation. After Prax walks away, Amos calmly turns to Strickland and says, "I am that guy," before shooting him without ceremony. This act sums up Amos perfectly. He doesn't kill out of anger. He kills because someone has to, and he accepts that he's the one willing to carry that burden for others. In this case, it's a twisted form of compassion, a dark gift to Prax, sparing him the trauma of taking a life. The arc concludes with a quiet goodbye between Amos and Prax. There's no grand emotional moment, but the bond between them is clear. Prax showed Amos what it means to care. Amos, in return, protected Prax's soul. Though Amos' relationship with Alex Kamal began as distant and uneasy, Season 3 brings them closer. Their shared experiences surviving near death, fighting side by side, and watching each other under pressure build real camaraderie. Amos starts to respect Alex's heart, even if he doesn't fully understand it. He jokes more with him, trusts him, and even protects him in his own quiet way. Meanwhile, Alex's strained relationship with Naomi causes friction within the crew. Naomi chooses to leave the Rocinante temporarily to aid the Belters aboard the Behemoth. While Amos doesn't voice his emotions like Alex does, Naomi's absence clearly affects him. She was his original moral compass, and her leaving creates a quiet void. Unlike Alex, who reacts emotionally, Amos internalizes the change, but it subtly pushes him closer to Holden and Alex as new moral anchors. Amos's relationship with James Holden becomes increasingly central in Season 3. While he once followed Holden out of necessity or chain of command, Amos now begins to see Holden as someone worth emulating, someone whose judgment can be trusted, even when it doesn't make sense to him. Holden, for his part, begins to understand Amos better, recognizing the value of his brutal clarity and loyalty. The two men, who at one point nearly came to blows, Amos once tried to shoot Holden in Season 1, now operate with unspoken trust. Amos doesn't just follow orders, he chooses to back Holden, even when Holden's decisions seem irrational, especially regarding the proto-molecule and his obsession with Miller's ghost. This trust comes full circle when Amos protects Holden aboard the Behemoth, showing a rare moment of personal loyalty rather than just crew duty. Holden has earned his place as a new moral reference point in Amos's mind, someone whose gut feelings are worth believing in, even if they're hard to explain. In Season 3, Amos Burton becomes something more than the Rocinante's blunt instrument. He begins to form authentic relationships, not just dependencies. His bond with Prax teaches him compassion. His growing trust in Alex and Holden brings out his human side. And his willingness to act, especially when others can't, shows that his violence, while terrifying, is often wielded with purpose. So that's it. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.